another edition of the Cubs Now podcast. I'm Lance Brozdowski, joined by my co-host, Alex Cohen. Alex, you just got off the NBC broadcast, taping this Sunday night. Was it hard to stay neutral? Because you're a neutral broadcaster. I know Taylor was there. I know we had our producer kicking it around. You had Mark Sweeney on the call who did great. But Jordan Walker hits the home run. Are you finding yourself having to go higher to not feel like a Cubs homer?
A little bit. But I think when it gets to Cubs-Cardinals, it's a little bit easier to throw things out the window because it's one of the best rivalries in sports.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you have a player like Jordan Walker with everything that he's gone through, being able to hit that home run, get to 20 home runs, he's an all-star to, turn a 2-0 deficit into a 3-2 game, then you're just talking about it from like a game excitement standpoint and a lead change standpoint. So from a plot, it makes things a little bit easier to communicate and show excitement for because it's just a more exciting game.
No doubt, no doubt. And I'm bearing the lead here, but we have Dan Kantrovitz, VP of Scouting from the Cubs, hopping on the second half of this. He's going to give us all the details on what the Cubs are going to do with the 23rd pick in the first-tier player draft, which is coming up on Saturday in Philadelphia. But we wanted to hit on a couple notable news items and other things going on in Cubs land first. This fog that rolled in Saturday.
Fog
Bowl was incredible. I just couldn't even believe that they were still playing. I was shocked they almost didn't delay it late in that game because you had players not knowing where the ball is. You had coaches not knowing when a ball went up, where anything was. I mean, you weren't at the game, right?
I was, so I watched the game. I was surprised they didn't start the delay a little bit sooner. I thought around the bottom of the fourth inning, you're like, man, this is getting bad. And then the fifth inning, Wrigley Field is somewhere in there. I mean, you could barely see it.
It's a great drone shot, too.
Yeah, Pete Crow-Armstrong was saying even after the game when he caught that fly ball, I think it was off the bat of Mason Wynn, he's like, there was so much more communication in the outfield. Couldn't really see it. And then you read the lips of J.J. Weatherholt saying, I can't see the baseball, I can't see the ball. That's normally an issue when you're seeing 96, 97 mile per hour cutters and off-speed stuff. And I think Mother Nature made it a little bit more fun. The crowd was electric during the 15-minute break. They were singing Country Roads. There was fans enjoying some beverages on the video board, and then a young fan who was getting out all of his energy and cotton candy and ice cream, flexing for the camera. I think it really added to a fun night. The only thing that could have been different was a Cubs victory.
Sure. The Cubs almost dropped. They did drop the series, but preserving the non-sweep, I guess, is the positive way to spin it. It was obviously a huge stride for them. I just feel like you can't get swept by the Cardinals at home, especially this close to the break.
This close to the break, July 3rd, 4th, and 5th. It's a big series coming off a 3-game sweep against the Padres. And 1-2, and then a 4-2 homestand looks a lot different than getting swept by the Cardinals and having it be a 3-3 homestand, especially off of a historic win against the Padres. I thought the Cardinals kind of threw away the game on Sunday in that 6th inning with the 2 errors, but I think the situational hitting for the Cubs has gotten better. Got a big hit from Alex Bregman, got a big hit from Nico Horner. They got hit by a pitch 4 times and still drew a bunch of walks. The only thing they didn't do this series against the Cardinals, they didn't homer. I guess they used them all on Wednesday against the Padres by hitting 8, but no home runs against the Cardinals in 3 games at Wrigley Field. You would like a little bit more power than
9 hit batters in this series. I don't really think any of them were intentional.
And no bench clearing Bros.
Yeah, it didn't really seem like any of them broached that area of intent. It was a lot of just pitching inside.
Yeah,
and
but I mean, still
command.
With Cubs-Cardinals in a series with that, heavy emotion, if you get 9 hit by pitches, you would expect
something. A warning,
warning, some retribution, and we didn't have that. I mean, you have 2 more series against them, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think they have 7 games left against the Cardinals. That's a lot heading up against a pretty good team. I think the main cap I have from seeing the Pirates, seeing the Cardinals, the Brewers are a very good team. They've been a good team for the last couple of years. They have this secret sauce magic going on where every pitcher who steps in there automatically gets better. This, to me, this season so far, Cubs playing very well, despite a very weird May, it, to me, has proved that over the next couple of years, the Pirates and the Cardinals are going to be very good teams.
They're going to be a problem.
They both have very deep farm systems. I believe Fangraphs has both of them top 5 from a quality standpoint of just the pure number of assets they have. But the years past of you can beat up on these 2 teams feels like it's gone by the wayside. I think this Central Division is going to be one of the tightest for the next 3-4 years down the road. Do you agree?
I do, and they do it in 2 completely different ways. With the Pirates, it's like pitching.
Yeah,
you have young arms, they throw 100, they're really good. You have the Cardinals, it's hitting. Jordan Walker's 24, J.J. Weatherhold's 24, an all-star snub. So that right there is 2 hitters that you can really build a foundation around. Mason Wynn's still young. They have hitters in their farm system that are really young, really good. They have an outfielder in Memphis who has 20 home runs in Baez, and they can really hit. If you look at the top 4 hitters in their order, I wouldn't like facing him with my pitchers. Alec Burleson can hit a little bit. I like the lineup. They definitely need to get better from a pitching standpoint. If you put them together, like if you put the Cardinals hitting and prospects offensively, and then the
team,
Pirates pitching and pitching prospects, you would have the Dodgers. Yeah. So you would have a super team. So
it's a great way to put it, actually. Cubs got a young guy too who's pretty good at baseball. It's Pete Crow-Armstrong, unbelievable Player of the Month award.
24 as well.
Yeah, I mean he's been a revelation this year from an OBP standpoint, and I think that's driving a lot of the run production. As he has mentioned, I really like the council bite from in the clubhouse announcing him as the representative for the Cubs in the All-Star game, which will be obviously electric. I'm kind of curious to see how Dave Roberts uses him. I mean, he's just been unbelievable. It's a great honor. I believe the nugget here is it's Babe Ruth and is it Roger Maris?
Lou Gehrig.
Lou Gehrig, excuse me, are the two.
Oh, you missed your old
stats.
Yankee
My old
superstar,
Yankees
man.
got mixed up here. But I mean, I believe the stat was basically batting average, slug, RBI. Like he's done everything. He's had an anytime you're on a board with those two guys in any capacity, you can't sneak on there. You have to earn it. And Pete's just been. I don't know what else to say here. Like, what are you expecting for the second half? That's my question. Right?
I don't know.
He's been so good.
I don't know if I can expect him to have a 380 on base percentage.
Sure.
It's insane, what he's been able to do from a patient perspective. It was the walk earlier in the homestand against Adrian Morejon that I'm like, he doesn't do that last year.
No way.
Even if you look at the second game against the Cardinals, one that the Cubs lost 3-0, Pete Crow-Armstrong, 1 for 1, 2 walks, a hit by pitch. You look at the game on Sunday, he didn't walk, I believe. I think he had a single, stole a base, got hit by a pitch, stolen base. I mean, that in a nutshell, it's not just hitting home runs and being explosive. It is getting on first base that gives the Cubs so much more of a spark. I mean, it is seeing him do this at 24 years old in season, and we've talked about this on podcasts before.
We got to bring it up all the time, though. This is like a generational season.
We have to reinforce it. Like, this isn't normal, especially for a player of that skill set. What he did last year was really impressive, but he did it with a sub-300 on base percentage. Yes. You're now up to 380. You're well above league average. I mean, it's really special.
I'm fascinated to see where he ends up in the MVP voting, because I know he's going to be up there. I feel like Ohtani already has it locked up. That's what the markets say. We'll see if there's any injuries.
But I mean, he gets hurt.
Yeah, Aaron Judge last year, as you mentioned on the last podcast, between him and Cal Raleigh. Could be a competition, but he's going to be up there. We will see how high. The Cubs right now are on pace for 90 wins, 70-ish% or so, give or take, on the playoff odds per Fangraphs. 4th best run differential in the National League. It would be the 2nd highest run differential if you flip them to the AL. Not as strong of a league this year. Your expectations for them second half. This is just past the second half point. We'll probably do another kind of second halfy preview pod coming up maybe in a week or so. But your impressions right now of this team after a really tough May. They've been really strong since June. Walking more than anybody in baseball as a team, the only team above 11% on the walk rate. That is the foundation of them as an offense. To me, the narrative is like, where does the pitching stand come August 31st? Do you agree?
I agree with that. I mean, for me, it'll be very telling how they finish before the break against the Orioles and against the Reds, who have been really struggling, and then coming back here to Wrigley Field after the break and playing the Twins and the Tigers. I mean, you really need to build a foundation against those 4 series or those 4 teams, because right after that, in no specific order, you have the Brewers, you have the Dodgers, and you have the Yankees. So if they're not playing well going into that stretch, it could be really bad. But I don't think it's going to be. But again, like, we'll talk after these next 4 series.
I agree. Tyone rehabbed in South Bend. That's a name you'll hopefully get back at some point. Hopefully he makes a start before the break. That'd be a nice kind of dose. Assad has been pretty good, not bad, I would say, in the interim. But David Peterson's a name, really strong first start, poor second start. There's just a lot of volatility in the rotation. That's what feels like that has to level out. And then the Dodgers series you mentioned is huge. I believe that overlaps with the deadline, which is Monday the 3rd of August that would be. So that's going to be big. You got the Dodgers coming to town, and you hope the Cubs are making
it's one that could really dictate what they do at the deadline. If they win 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers here, that pushes you to 12, 13 games over 500. Might be a little bit different rather than if the Dodgers come in here and win 2 out of 3 or take 3 straight. I'm not saying one series dictates it, but I think it really could impact it.
I think you're correct, because I do feel like teams that are model-driven like the Cubs are basing a lot of their deadline decision-making on playoff odds. Like, how likely are we to get a home series that will dictate our regression, specifically on rentals? I do feel like in the back of their mind is always that kind of years of control acquisition, the Logan Webbs of the world. Those are really tough to get done in season. It feels like foundations for those are always laid at the deadline, but you never hear about it until the offseason. Very similar with the Kyle Tucker trade, where it was like, Dana Brown and I talked, paraphrasing a little here on Jed Hoyer, and then it goes, you don't find that out until December when the trade actually goes through. So my brain is always going towards, well, who are Jed and Carter talking to that we're not hearing about, rather than maybe some of the rumors around acquirable arms, the Kyle Freelands of the world. I like Casey Mize a lot as an acquisition, be a good kind of sneaky
But that's if the
one-year guy.
Tigers sell. Like,
It's a great point.
And also, it changes in the course of a week. The Padres, when they came in here, they were possibly in buying mode. Then you lose 3 games against the Cubs. You get dominated in the series against the Dodgers. What if they're selling? What if they're selling Adrian Morahone? What if they're selling Yuki Matsui? Like, Adrian Morahone would be a arm that I would. I mean, we talked about him before a lot.
Back up the Brinks truck. He's
he's a free agent at the end of 2026, so maybe a little bit less.
He's a great rental, but he's a rental that a team is going to pay a lot more for than you think.
Correct.
Whether that's the Cubs remains to be seen.
I mean, like a lefty throwing 101 and having devastating
Hardest
stuff.
throwing lefty non-Chapman in baseball. I think That's what we were saying on our pregame show here. Yeah. What's your dream list for the dead? Not actual names. Just give me like. Is it a starter reliever? Is it a starter 2 relievers? Where are you kind of leaning?
Pitching.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care if it's a starter. I don't care if it's a reliever. It's just guys who you can trust to get outs. I mean, give me the best pitcher possible that is available and doesn't hemorrhage your farm system.
I like it. All right. One more thing before we get to Dan Kantrovitz. Wanted to shout out Ethan Conrad. Nice, beautiful transition here into the draft.
Nice work,
I know, it's very good by me looking down at my notes, telling me where to go. Ethan Conrad was drafted in the first round out of Wake Forest, had a shoulder injury, and that prevented him, that basically had him fall in the draft. And then you flash forward to the spring, he had a back injury, which has kind of delayed the start to his professional career. We finally are getting some game action from Ethan Conrad, who's a big dude. He hits tanks. You see some of the exit velocities here from my guy, Greg, who does a really good job with that at the Vines.
Greg Huss, 458.
He does a very good job.
What a wall scraper.
Keeping us updated on a lot of the complex stuff going on. I anticipate, this was a live VP. He did play in a complex league game or two. I anticipate him getting into some affiliate ball as we get past kind of the futures game and the quote-unquote second half of the minor league season. This is exciting. It's a little delayed. We would love to have seen this alongside Josiah Heartshorn, them coming up together and for him to already be at high A, double A.
But it's not like he's missing the season. If he can get in July and we were talking about Ethan Conrad possibly being the top-ranked prospect in the Cubs system, now being surpassed by Josiah Heartshorn and Jefferson Rojas. If he can have a big second half, remember Ethan Conrad, he was a top 10 talent coming coming into the draft. He was hurt halfway through his season at Wake Forest. That allowed him to drop. I mean, if he gets back into what he did in the first half of 2025 in college, it's a really good farm system.
No doubt. Yeah. Exciting player that we're fascinated to see. He was drafted by Dan Kantrovitz, who we will have after the break telling us everything about the 2026 MLB Draft in Philadelphia. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Cubs Now podcast. Lance Brozdowski alongside Alex Cohen. We're going to talk to Dan Kantrovitz, who's the VP of Scouting with the Cubs. It will be myself and Elise Menaker. Let's take a listen. Very excited to be joined now by the Cubs VP of Scouting. His name is Dan Kantrovitz. We're about to get up to the MLB Draft. This will be your 7th, Dan. We're going to sit down for a conversation alongside Elise here. First off, what's been the biggest change over the last 7 years in drafting for you?
Oh, goodness. I think there's always the proliferation of data, which is a lot of just video, which is a lot of just pitch data. There's more player tracking data. And then I guess aside from the data standpoint, just the knowledge of these kids coming out seems to be different. Even the high school kids, it's like they've all been exposed to things so that when they get into like our system and you put them in our pitch lab or our hitting lab where it's got all the bells and whistles and it's like a Hollywood movie studio. They're like, oh yeah, I've seen this, or I've done this before. So nothing like is. These kids are much smarter, much more informed, much more aware of just I guess the process and then also just the modern day analytics and just things that there's very few things that we can tell them once they get into our system that is new to them.
Every draft has strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. What is it about this class that maybe stands out and then perhaps a weakness of it?
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out is there's no one clear demographic that is just like, maybe it's not like high school shortstops, or it's not like, oh, there's a lot of pitching, or there's a lot of, it's just pretty fragmented in terms of just the different demographics, pretty evenly distributed, I guess you could say.
When you mentioned the data that's involved in the game now, I'm curious because that was one of the first things that you said when you're thinking about what sticks out. So, like you were saying, it's really at high school and college level. What is it about the data that they're buying into or that everyone's really focusing on right now?
Yeah, so for example, the past few days we've been camped out in a conference room going over a lot of like high school hitters, and we're talking about
And they're
things,
measuring things in high school?
even high school. So I mean, we have high-speed video cameras that are going around the country, guys that have these that are going around the country, and we're collecting whether it's contact rate, whether it's chase, whether it's bat speed, whether it's like the bat angle. Things that like were new for college players 5, 6, 7 years ago. So, and then I guess at the college stadiums, there's, it goes beyond TrackMan and tracking data. There's, a lot of the kinematics and the biomechanics data capture devices that we've seen pop up in the last few years.
So I'm going to combine two questions into one. One, how has it changed scouting? And two, how has it changed players? Because I would imagine if you have a high school or a young kid and they're already like super in tune with all this stuff, they can be way ahead of the game and very advanced at a young level.
Yeah, I think so. Like at the combine, when we're talking to these players, one thing we're trying to assess is to what extent have they been exposed to this, right? Because on one hand, if they have no exposure to it, it represents a development opportunity for us and our player development staff. But on the other hand, if they have been exposed to it, we know that the transition, the ramp coming into the system is going to be a little bit smoother. So I think, it could mean two different things, and neither of which is like necessarily bad. It's just like represents like just getting to know the player and kind of where they are up to this point. And then, I guess in terms of how it's changed scouting.
Because if you have these cameras everywhere.
Yeah. I mean, look, the first thing that comes to mind is the more data you have, the more data errors that there could be. So like we have to check it all and clean it all and make sure that it's all accurate. So our scouts look at it when they're out scouting a player. The data might even show up like on the Jumbotron at college games now, and it's like, what's the vertical, horizontal movement of this pitch? And it tells you the pitch type, where in the past you had to like, hey, was that a slider? Was that a cutter?
Even on the big league.
Yeah, in the big leagues too. Yeah. And so I think the biggest thing is like we try to figure out how it can help our scouts assist with their evaluation, and then what are the areas, where are the holes that scouts can kind of fill in that the data doesn't already provide insight into.
Okay, we can't let you off the hook this easy in this one. Pitching, this has been the topic. You guys have now drafted a lot in the last 3 drafts. Prior to that, you did select some. Jed Hoyer's talked about needing more pitching depth. Do you guys think you will approach this draft different from a pitching standpoint?
Our mindset, definitely. I think you can't go into it without, just that in the back of your mind, right? And so then I think our question is, how much does it really enter into like the exact strategy with every pick? And I think in the past, our goal, what we've set out to do, our directive is to just collect as many future wins as we can with these players, position player, pitcher, agnostic of what they're playing. I think this year, like probably even more than a tiebreaker, it's like, well, there is an emphasis on trying to maybe shift some of those wins to the pitching side. Now, the tricky thing is you can't just say, okay, we're going to take more pitchers and then maybe not leak wins or, what you're trying to actually collect overall. So it's like a tricky thing to assess, to what degree are we willing as an organization to say, well, we're trying to collect as much pitching as we can, but we don't want to do that at the expense of just having a really good draft, right? We don't want to like pass on your Josiah Heartshorns of the world, if we think that like, just to take a pitcher in that round. So it's a tricky balance for sure, but it's in the forefront of our thinking right now for sure.
NIL has become a huge thing on the collegiate side, and I like the implication that like you can't give up value to draft pitching. I almost wonder if the resources shift late to the draft on pitching. Say it's like, hey, 4th through 10th round, that's kind of going to be our chunk to grab names. How much do you think the influence of NIL and the amount of money these college guys, if you decide to go college route with pitching, will force you guys to kind of make calculations as to the probability of actually getting a guy? Because you say you're bottom third in pool right now, pool size, which is a little different than other drafts in terms of how they're structured, NBA or NFL. Like, talk to me about the NIL and the implications on how flexible it allow you guys to be late in the draft.
Yeah, I think this year might be the first year, at least since I've been here, where it really might come into play that early. Historically, it was like, okay, after the 10th round, where you're usually giving players a signing bonus along the lines of like $150,000, just by the way that the draft is structured. It comes into play. It would come into play there, where they go back to the SEC maybe, and that senior might have that same amount of money being offered to him by his school, and it might sort of change who we draft in the 15th, 16th round. This year, I think because NIL budgets have been increasing from with the colleges out there, there's like more competition for our dollar to these players this year, and so I think it's going to come into play actually a lot earlier than say like the 15th round. Now, we don't know for sure until we actually get into it, when that happens. But I think it's safe for us to assume it's it's good for our planning, good for our strategic sort of planning throughout the draft to say, well, what happens if this does start to affect our calculus like in the 6th, 7th, 8th round?
If I can go back to the pitching for a second, what do you find is, I don't know if there's going to be one answer to this, but from when you draft them to as you're developing them, that is crucial, maybe something that they have or something that you guys need to do in developing to get this pipeline going?
Well, I guess the first place I would start is Tyler Zombro and his staff on the pitching side and the development side have been crucial to our efforts. I mean, going all the way back to January, whether it's the identification of players, whether it's the evaluation of these players, how we're approaching the scouting, who we decide to allocate more resources to. So I think for starters, his involvement, his fingerprints will be all over this draft in terms of the pitchers that we select, and that's a good thing. And then I think, from there, it's like, what do we value? Well, I think it starts with like two basic pillars, whether it's just like velocity and spin. I think those are things outside of just like your physicality and how much you're going to develop there. I think those are two things that like our player development feels like they're uniquely positioned to work with and to mold. So not every pitcher is going to check perfect boxes, check the box perfectly in those two respects. But I think if you ask me what are two things that we're prioritizing, it's going to be that, because I feel like then you can start to work with a lot of different things once you have just velocity and spin.
Is there a position group, whether it's pitcher, a position player, that there's this element where they can surprise you as they develop? Because do you know what to expect more basically, say from like a pitcher and what potentially their ceiling could be? Or is there a position group, like, I don't know, say like a third baseman, or is that individual because you look at their size? I don't know, that's kind of what I'm asking. If there's a group that can surprise you along the way that you found over the years.
I don't know if I can isolate one particular group that's like more surprising than another, but I'd say they all can surprise you. And I think maybe you just go back to how old a player is, how physically mature he is, because once your body starts to transform, it changes a lot of the way that you move. It changes your power output, how explosive you are, how fast you are, how coordinated you get. And so I think the younger you are down the age spectrum, the more that like we could quote unquote be surprised, And I think, so if that's a pitcher, what does that mean? That means that if they put on 20, 25 pounds from our like strength and conditioning group or under our high performance umbrella, maybe that adds another couple ticks of velo. Maybe that, ends up increasing the power across his entire arsenal, and just changes the entire profile of that pitcher. If that's a position player, maybe that adds a few extra ticks of exit velocity when he's hitting the ball. Maybe that forces us to rethink what position he's playing. So it can mean a lot of different things, but I think rather than like a demographic, it's more probably just like that spectrum of age.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can you take me through draft day for you?
Yeah.
What time are you waking up? What's the fuel? Do you sleep the night before? Have you slept the prior 3 nights to draft day? Like, what is the flow?
Have you slept in the last month?
So like the last month was the most grueling for sure, and because that's when you've got conference tournaments. That's then when you have the combine, and the combine is probably the most grueling week of the entire spring. It's Monday to Saturday, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. player interviews every 30 minutes, like speed dating style. It's intense, and then there's also stuff going on the field. And that's an intense week of just like a lot coming at you. You're on the entire time. You've got our full, a lot of staff in our room at the same time interviewing these kids. And then after that, we, shifted right into some workouts at our complex in Mesa, right when the combine was over. So that was then like that weekend. And then like the next day, we're here in a conference room with Judd and Carter starting some draft meetings. So that was like when you kind of have to just like slow it down a little bit and say, let me get my feet under me and, figure out where I am. And but at this point, I think it's just important to get on a sleep schedule and not try to keep
for all of us at this point, Dan.
For all of us,
We get
exactly.
it.
So yeah, so I try not to have crazy late nights right now. I think that'd be counterproductive once you get into the draft.
I love it. All right, so a lot of caffeine in the morning seems what I'm gleaning here. Yeah, in the morning of the
Yeah,
draft.
a cup of coffee.
right,
Honestly,
not
just
bad.
that routine is important to get.
Yeah,
on,
totally.
not being too crazy about
Dan
it.
Kantrovitz, thanks a ton for taking the time to chat.
Yeah.
We're really excited to see you take. Who are you taking at 23? I feel like I have to ask. I know you can say no there, so I'll answer for you. But for Elise and Dan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, enjoyed it. Thanks. Appreciate it.
A huge thank you to Dan Kantrovitz for taking the time. He's a great guy to talk to. I'm curious to see what he does in the draft. Alex, do you have a prediction? Position, even if it's roughly? What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to listen to Dan. He's always so forthright and
He's good.
transparent with
He's really
us.
good.
Really appreciate that.
Your guy, Daniel Jackson, right?
I
That's the name. Catcher
wouldn't
from
be
Georgia.
surprised if Daniel Jackson
Yeah.
from Georgia would be the.
I think he's the consensus
he's there,
name.
yeah, it's a good
Myself,
one.
Callis, who's not here, he's embodied in this empty space.
Yeah.
We're all in on Daniel Jackson from Georgia. We'll see what the Cubs do. Thanks for joining us on the Cubs Now podcast. We'll see you guys soon.